Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Moody. I am the managing partner of Vertus Group. We are a sustainability consulting firm here in Omaha, and doing our weekly Facebook Live. I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about a webinar that we held, a private invitation-only webinar that we held about a week and a half ago with several of our clients and some, we'll call them potential clients as well. So a couple things about it. First, there were almost 100 attendees that attended, which was great. Huge shout outs to Methodist Health Systems and Metropolitan Utilities District. They had quite a few employees that joined us. But there were other organizations, many of our clients that were there, and we had a special guest join us, which was really kind of what I think drew a lot of people in. Her name is Martha Shulski. She is the Nebraska State Climatologist. So really what we wanted to talk about, and I'll give you just a couple highlights today, was in light of the IPCC 6th report that came out in August, we wanted to talk about what the implications were for Nebraska. A lot of people hear climate change and they think about the poles, they think about the Arctic, they think about sea levels, and none of those things feel particularly tangible for a lot of people that live where we do in Omaha and in Nebraska. So we brought Martha in, given her expertise in the climate around us. We'll share more information on all of our social media pages, so if you're really interested in diving in, reach out to me. We'll share the video directly with you if you'd like, or we've been sharing just snippets here and there on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But Martha dropped all sorts of knowledge, quite honestly, and I'm not going to get to all of her highlights. I think, what she said, here are the things that I took away from it. One, it's here now. Climate change is happening. We are in the midst of a climate crisis, and this is reflective of what's happening writ large, but certainly as it relates to Nebraska, it's happening now. She cited several examples where, due to climate change, the weather and the weather events were more significant than they likely would have been otherwise. And she asked what I thought was a really appropriate question about each of those events, and I'll give you a couple. Not was it caused by climate change? The question that she asked was, how much worse was it made by climate change? I use the analogy, for those of you that are baseball fans, Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is widely known to have used steroids. He hit all sorts of home runs all over the place, longer than anyone has ever hit them. And could you say that each one of his home runs was a result of the steroids that he took? Perhaps not, but it increased the likelihood that he was going to hit a home run, and it increased how far he was going to hit that home run. And the same can be said for climate change, and that's how I think about it anyway. Climate change is making our storms much worse and more frequent. Martha talked about the floods in Niobrara, Nebraska, around Niobrara, Nebraska. I was just there this weekend, actually, and the damage is still there, shockingly. Massive flooding as a result of a super cold February and then we had some very quick warming and rain in a matter of a few days or weeks, and the flooding up there was just astronomical. Tore out some bridges that were shocking, and so that's an example. Perhaps more recently and local is the polar vortex that happened in February, and she talked at length about how, even though our Februarys are getting colder, that is a result of climate change. The globe is, yes, warming, but, and she'll explain it much better than I did, so if you'd like to see it, let us know. But the implications in February, the Arctic is pushing air down and making it even colder here in February. We had a polar vortex, which was extraordinarily cold, as you might recall. Again, a result in somewhat caused by climate change. And then obviously most recently, we had downtown flooding in Omaha in August. So Martha made a lot of really good points. She shared a lot of examples about how it is happening today. There are several implications for what's happening. I won't go into them all, but we'll continue to share those little snippets out on our social media channels. And then I think the last thing that I'll say with respect to what Martha talked about that really struck me was I asked her a question about what leaders, and there were many leaders of organizations that were in attendance at this webinar. And I asked her, what should leaders be thinking about as it relates to climate change, as these leaders of massive organizations are planning their next budget cycle, thinking about what their strategic direction is going to be as an organization. I really kind of wanted her to boil it down a little bit and really hit the nail on the head. And honestly, she did. She said the most important thing in her view is normalizing the conversation around climate change. That was powerful to me, and it really reinforced the importance of doing that naturally, but it also really kind of made me think about how and when these conversations are coming up in boardrooms and in leadership rooms, and while getting coffee, like all of those situations and scenarios where somebody might be in a position to talk about climate change, leading toward action. They start with a conversation. They start with an acknowledgement that the science is pretty clear, and for many people, it starts with the discussion about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing and what your relatives are seeing and experiencing. So it's based in the here and now, but her really re-emphasizing the need to talk about climate change and to normalize that conversation, I think was really, really instructive for me and for our work, quite honestly. And for those of you that are leading organizations, I think the reality is perhaps it may not have elevated to a conversation in your boardroom or at the leadership table, but I promise you, people within your organization are talking about it. I promise you they are. We've got data that supports it, and there's plenty of data out there that supports that people are talking about it, people are concerned about it, and people are wanting action. So to that end, action, I'll call on many of you to continue to talk about it. I know many of you are, but I want you to continue to do so, and bringing it up in situations and scenarios where perhaps it may be a little bit uncomfortable, but we need to normalize the conversation. We need to start talking about it. I found myself this weekend wondering and thinking about, for those organizations that perhaps haven't moved yet, aren't going, what's holding them back? And I think there are probably a lot of reasons, but a couple came to mind for me that I think are worth talking about. One is, I think folks are unsure where to start. I don't think they think about this. They think about how big it is, how scary it is, and they think perhaps, well, what can I do? I'm just a person, or we're just an organization. What can we really do? While I understand that concern, we got to get going, and I would suggest that the very first step goes back to what we talk about internally frequently, is you can't manage what you don't measure. And so let's start with the greenhouse gas inventory. Let's understand what your organization is emitting into the atmosphere. Let's just start there with some data. I think it's a really straightforward, easy, dare I say, semi-inexpensive process to go through to get you some data to really understand where your environmental footprint is. After that, you can have a really meaningful conversation about what to do about it, how you can mitigate it, and how you can start to plan for adaptation and resilience. But until you do that, I think that's a really simple first step that every organization can take, is to get that greenhouse gas inventory done so that you can have an eyes wide open conversation about where your footprint is. I think the other reason that organizations, that leaders are perhaps still sitting aside and not acting, I don't think it's ignorance anymore. I think that was the case 5 or 10 years ago. I don't think, fairly people weren't paying much attention to it. I don't think that's an excuse anymore. I think in some cases, folks are a little bit concerned about the implications for their business, for their organization. They may worry that were I to take action, it could have negative consequences on my organization's ability to succeed. Again, I understand that sentiment, and I would encourage anyone who's sort of waffling a little bit about moving forward because of that concern, is to say, number one, our climate demands action today. And number two, we have yet to find a case study for any of our clients where climate action is a divergence from where their organization wants to go writ large. They're always aligned. And so I think you just need to take a step forward, again, get that greenhouse gas inventory done, and then we can have a good conversation about what steps you can take in order to affect change, in order to make a difference. Okay, those are my 2 bits of wisdom. Again, I'll point to resources on our website. First, we've got a climate action plan downloadable. So if you are wondering about getting moving, especially if you work for a city, a municipality, a county, if you're wondering about how to get started, we've got a great downloadable that you can take a look at that will get you pointed in the right direction and help you understand what a climate action plan is, how it works, what its outcomes are, what the process is, etc. So go to our website, veritasgroup.com, to see that. And then also we have just launched and will soon be putting more information about a new product, I'll call it, a new service, I should probably better put, our net zero pathway planning process. So it really boils down into measuring your greenhouse gas inventory, measuring that, doing some planning work to try and understand what are the specific steps you can take in order to reduce your emissions, and then moving and then going. The third part is really just implementation. So that's another thing for you to take a look at, is our net zero pathway service. Okay, that's it for Monday. I hope you all have a wonderful week. More information at veritasgroup.com. We're also out on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if there's anything that you need from me, Craig at veritasgroup.com, let me know, and we're more than happy to provide you any and all information that you need in order for your organization to achieve your climate goals. Okay, everybody, have a great week. Thank you.